All right, and we are now officially live for another
Yeah.
episode of Dark Bites podcast. And of course, as always, I'm your host, Rick Hipson. Most importantly, though, I am here today with Lynne Hansen, book cover artist extraordinaire. Lynn, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hang out with me here today and kind of finagle around some of the technology that is Zoom to get everything looking beautiful and all nice and shiny for everybody.
Yay, glad to be
So
here.
yeah, thank you very much. So your setup is looking fantastic. So I know it was a lot of hard work, sweat, blood, and lots of cursing getting all set up into the new digs here. So I know I had the pleasure of chatting with I don't know if I'm gonna say the better half, but certainly the other half, Jeff
The
Strand,
other
not too
half.
long ago. So yeah, so he was telling me all about the move to Cheektowaga. I was gonna say
Chattanooga, Chattanooga.
Chattanooga. Okay, thank you. I was thinking Buffalo here. So yeah, Chattanooga, the other funny city. So and things are going pretty well there. Then Jeff mentioned you guys aren't total strangers to the area.
Oh, it's wonderful. We love it. It's got we're still really super convenient. We lived in Atlanta before, and so we're now still
Yeah.
super convenient to come go down and see our friends there and enjoy Atlanta. But Chattanooga is uh, just wonderful. It's we have a really nice neighborhood where everything's kind of low and mellow, which is nice because
Yeah.
we work from home all the time. So
Yeah, you need a place that's not you know, Bourbon Street in New Orleans or something crazy and wild like that. So
it is, and we enjoy the area a lot. Like when you work really hard, take breaks and walk around the block, and that wasn't a good fit in Atlanta. So.
yeah, it looks like a beautiful area. And are you very far from the actual, I guess, mountains or foothills or I'm not sure what they refer to them as over there.
We are in the valley, and if you look up, you see the mountains.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's very cool. Yeah, it always makes for pretty nice scenery, especially if you're creative. I find that there's no better environment to be creative than you know, good old-fashioned Mother Nature. So that's pretty cool that you've got that as your backdrop. So.
right.
Very cool. So I guess if you don't mind, and I apologize if this is a bit of a repeat because I know you're absolutely amazing at keeping everybody informed as to what you're all about through conventions, through other podcasts, and of course your newsletter, which I think is one of the best newsletters out there. One of the ones that I,
Oh, thank you.
oh, you're very welcome. And I'm not just saying that. I think it's fantastic. I mean, you've got a real personable approach to it. It never feels like I'm being spammed. It feels like I'm actually getting you know the real Lynne Hansen and not sort of a representative. Um, I've been embarrassingly leggy on my own newsletter, and I find that that's not easy to come across naturally and to put yourself out there without coming across like you're essentially a walking billboard. So you tend to put things across where I feel like I'm getting the real picture of you. So
Well, thank
um,
you.
you're welcome.
Well, I love. Do you want me to tell folks a little bit about like who I am first, and then let's talk about the newsletter because I love my
Sure.
newsletter so much.
Yeah, please do.
I'm a book cover artist. I've been a book cover artist for 11 years. I started out doing book covers for Jeff Strand, who's my husband.
Yeah.
And I have done covers for Jonathan Mayberry, Christopher Golden. I've illustrated works by Joe Lansdale, George Romero. I've done hundreds and hundreds of covers over the years. A huge chunk of my body of work has been for Cemetery Dance, and then most recently, I did the most recent the cover for the most recent issue of Weird Tales magazine, which is like
Yeah.
issue number 364, baby. And
And it's
so I did
gorgeous
that,
too, and there it is.
right? Oh yes. Dun, dun, dun.
I love that. Oh, that is gorgeous.
So to be part of a of such an amazing history of illustration and storytelling was just um, like mind-boggling, mind-boggling. So yes.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful work on there. So, and what would you say? And that's amazing. I had no idea that you were doing book covers for the last 11 years. So I've only really been aware of your book covers for maybe the last few years or so. Which, I mean, you've taken such a huge jump into everything, and I think you're really getting your name out there a lot. You seem like you're really coming into your own where you're not just talking about yourself, but everybody on social media is talking about you, which is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
What would
What?
you? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There's a reason that it's really only been in the last few years that people are like, "Oh, you do this," and it's because when I started out, my very first cover was for Jeff because he had his book Wolf Hunt was
Yep.
supposed to be coming out from Leisure, and it was 2 months before the book was due out. Leisure canceled their horror line.
Mm.
And so I was like, I think I could do a cover for you because I worked in marketing and promotions at a historic theater.
Oh, okay.
I did a lot of kind of like advertising work, and I worked in Photoshop and Illustrator. I thought, oh, that can't be that much more difficult, and it totally was. It totally, totally was. And so I so it took me much longer than I thought to do the first cover, but we put my credit in the copyright page.
Yep.
And then I also did a cover for Jim Moore. And and then everything else came uh, references from from those initial commissions.
Wow.
And the biggest one was one of the things that happened to me very early on was I did 38 book covers for Christopher Golden as he was resurrecting his backlist. So he'd get his rights
Wow.
back. And so it was everything from like young adult to mystery to thriller to horror to fantasy. And whatever he had, I would do new covers and help him bring him back in print. So that was a huge way to
Okay.
build my portfolio when I was first starting out. And but I just always had work. Like people would see my work and they would hire me and I never really talked about it. I just always had work. And then about 3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe, um, I always go to Nikon up in Rhode Island every year, and the and they have an art show in addition to this in addition to this very intimate convention. And the art show is always filled with like my heroes, right?
Yeah.
and this year, that year, about 4 years ago, uh, the guy who was running the art show said, "Are you finally going to show your art here this year?" And I'm like, "Oh, really?" Yes, yes, I am. And then I had to figure out
Please.
how to do that. And
I love it.
but so I had to go through all of the covers that I'd done through all the years and pick out just 25. And when I did that, it was like, wow, now I have to kind of see who I am as an artist and what are the best pieces
Yeah.
and how they speak to me. And so I had my 25 favorite pieces in the show, and I had to figure out how to do fine art prints of them and mat them and mount them, and all the logistics of doing a show, which I had never done before. But I figured it was a nice, safe environment because we'd been going to Nikon since 1995, I guess,
Yeah.
and so nobody was going to yell at me or give me grief. And
They're all your
I
friends
did my
there.
first right, yeah. And so I did my first show there, and the very first show, I sold enough prints to make back all of my startup costs, all of the mats, all of the printing, all of
Oh,
the
that's
everything.
perfect.
And then 3 weeks after that, I did Scares That Care. 2 weeks, I guess, and I sold almost as much again, and a lot of those same folks repeated. And it was like, oh, you do this now? Like, yes, I have been doing this for like, 8 years, something like this.
Yeah.
And suddenly just started getting deluged with commissions. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I've had to raise my rates 3 times. And
Right.
I
Just to
kept
slow
getting,
down
I
the
thought if I
funnel a
raise my
little bit.
rates, right? If I raise my rates, I'll get fewer commissions. It'll be great.
Yeah.
And I did not. I just keep getting more and more commissions. So,
Oops.
I'm trying. I'm trying, but I love it. So it was really
Yeah.
doing shows that got me the visibility of what I do as an artist. Um, so it was that was kind of the thing that really kind of took my career to the next level.
That is fantastic. And there's so much to take away from all that too. I think for anybody that's struggling right now with their artistic output or wondering if they should jump into things and they're feeling overwhelmed or maybe not sure where to start. I think there's so many gems that you just dropped there. Then
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, to get started, I think no matter what you do and to do it well, there's going to be you have to have some sort of inherent skill and talent. Obviously, you do. The first thing that you did spoke for itself and did its own marketing on your behalf. And I think it's really cool that you had no idea how you're going to pull it off, not knowing how difficult it was going to be. But once you got going, obviously your reason, like you just had to get the stuff out there. So it seems like who cares how difficult it is because you're going to figure it out no matter what. And it's the drive that is essentially going to be your ultimate motivator. So you can just learn whatever you needed to learn, and obviously it's paid off really well for you. And that's amazing, you know.
Well, I love the other thing that I learned during all of this process. When I first started out, I was like, "You want me to do any cover? I will do that cover." So, like,
Yeah,
like you want a shirtless guy for a spicy romance? I can do that. Do you want me to do spaceships and alien invasion? I can totally do that. And I just like anything you wanted, I would do. And then the same thing, the thing that I did at the same time as starting to exhibit my work for the first time was I said, I am only going to do horror. I grew up being a horror fan since the time I was tiny.
yeah,
Like my earliest memories are watching the Late Late Show with my dad on one side, my big brother on the other, and we loved scary movies. I'm a horror fan my entire life, and I
very
said I'm
cool.
only going to do horror, and if that means I get fewer commissions, that's what I will do. And it didn't. It got more.
That's amazing. Well, I think certainly for as a lot of people know too, there's so much you can do with the horror covers. I mean, there's literally no boundaries whatsoever, and I suppose the same can be said for fantasy books as well. Obviously, that's more my niche as well, so I don't. Maybe it's the same for sci-fi or romance, and I'm too I don't know too stuck in my ways to understand this. But I know with horror and fantasy, a book really it's okay to judge a book by its cover. You know what I mean? Some of the names that you mentioned, Christopher Golden, Joe Lansdale, George Romero. Uh, Obviously, the content backs up the cover as well, but I know that through the covers that you do, there's so much that it that you capture in your little space. I mean, even the weird tales there, and I can see that clearly doing all those books and all the various genres and subgenres with Christopher Golden, that was such a great breeding ground for you to learn all these different styles because it seems like it really culminated even in that. That's a perfect example with Weird Tales. Is you've got this. I mean, it's beautiful. It's grotesque. There's a little romanticism going on there. There's a bit of fantasy. It's creepy and it's everything on there. So I think that's really cool that you were able to learn all that early and tie it into whatever whatever the publisher demands of that. So
Well,
it's
I think one of the things that was a challenge for me early on, and I think probably still is as an artist, is
yeah,
when I do almost exclusively book covers, and to me, the art is always in service to the story,
yeah,
right? So it's my art should adapt to the nature of that book, and that means that you don't get the same style on every book. You get the style. I adapt my style to what works well for that book, what tells that story the best. So I have you know I have some that are like that emulate like the vintage horror paperback style. I have some
yeah,
stories that transition more into that kind of. I do a lot of kind of surreal art. Sometimes if it represents the book well, I have some like crazy dark kind of splatterpunk stuff. I have, but it's all about what the story requires, and I think that's a little bit harder to see me as an artist when to me it's all about the book, and so, but I'm cool with that because there is nothing better in the world to have a job where I get to read amazing books and then pick all of my favorite bits, figure out what will represent the book well, and then create art that will help other people find this amazing book. It's just like I don't care if people see me in it. I want them to see the book. And 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 that's cool. I mean, I love it. I get commissions for people who say you get you capture the spirit of the book, and that's the whole goal, right?
Yeah.
You want people to know what they're getting into when they pick up your book. So,
And it seems like you've got the best of both worlds there because you're doing all this stuff in the background, but you're quite literally bringing the story to life in the background by creating that foreground. It's almost a bit of a paradox, I guess, in a way, but it's such a cool approach and an advantage that you get to have. What do you
yeah.
so to drill down to that then? So for other people that are maybe looking to get into cover artists or people that are looking to find a great cover artist like yourself, what would you say makes a cover a great cover?
Oh, I think that there are just several key elements. The first thing is I believe I believe the cover artist should read the book
Yeah,
because you need to convey the style and tone of the book. And it is so much easier for me as an artist to come in with clear eyes like a reader because I am not the author who spent ages with their blood, sweat, and tears pouring into this book. I am not the editor that acquired it and fell in love with it. I come clear as a reader. And so it is much easier for me to read a book and say that's the thing that that encapsulates the core of this book. And people, when they get, if I take the essence of this and put it on the cover, when people get to that part, they're going to be like, oh yeah, this is the ride that I signed on for. And so the first part is about encapsulating the story, but there's also I have a really specific process, and I think that every book cover needs to read really well when it's tiny. So it needs to, the first time when you see it this big, it needs to be, uh, I know, I know what kind of book that is, even when it's really super tiny. And I need to be able to read the author's name and the title. Because if you can't read the author's name and the title, then you're missing a whole level of branding. When you click on it, it better not just be like, oh, now it's bigger, because that's just boring. It should be like,
yeah,
oh, there's a thing I did not notice. And then they're going to read that book cover description. And when they read the book description, that book description better match that cover.
right.
And if they have, and if it does, then they're much more likely to just click buy now, right? Or pick it, take it up to the register, because you've gotten them involved multiple times with the book before they've even broken the spine. And so it is so important to create that level of interaction for a book cover for a potential reader. That's how you get sales. And as much as I love the the artistic side of what I do, ultimately it's about the marketing, right? It's
Right.
about selling books for that author and publisher. And so it's all those things have to come to bear, or else you're missing opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think one of the really cool things you're doing too is, and I know you've done panels specifically on this as far as breathing life into old books, is that you're speaking to that engagement level, speaking of the getting folks really engaged in the books and getting that promotional aspect into it. You're being able to do that to literally breathe new life into old books. I know you've done that with Jeff. Jeff's older books with Wolf Hunt.
Here we go. Also, here's my very favorite example of this.
Okay.
So, the Haunted Forest tour came out, uh, I guess, 15 years ago, And
Yeah.
about 5 years ago, we decided to, it had been with two different publishers. So Jeff and Jim, all of their fans already had this book, right?
Yeah.
And it had been around for a while, and they decided, well, we're going to get our rights back, and we're going to republish it. And so I did a new cover, and uh, it was instantly one of their best-selling books, a book that had been around for 10 years at the time.
That's incredible.
And I think that the key is it had originally had some really cool art, but it was for kind of more of a limited edition audience.
Yeah.
And so it had lots of great detail and lots of cool monsters. But when it was a tiny little thumbnail off in the distance, you couldn't see all that cool detail. And so if you look at the Haunted Forest tour and you see based on this cover that you think that it is about a giant monsters coming out of the forest and attacking a tramload of tourists, that's exactly what you're going to get in that book. And
Yeah.
so if you pick it up based on the cover, you're going to like the book. And it's, there are so many books. I think there's also a lot of people don't know what makes a good book cover, and it's hard. There are also, I mean, there's all kinds of technical details that you see, that challenges that people have, things like, especially when people do like photo montage covers where they
Yeah.
just kind of put three images together and kind of blend them together, and it's just like a mess. It's not a story. It doesn't think about the story there. Or they have things that mix brightness levels or color schemes. When you look at something, you have warm light and you have cool light. And if you put two images that have different lighting setups together, they don't look right. But you don't think about that. Like and unless that's your job, you don't think
Right.
about that. You don't know why it doesn't connect, or why it's not clicking, or why the book isn't selling. And all of those things, they may run under the radar, but they really impact how people feel about your book. You know,
Yeah. No,
I,
that's fascinating insight.
I think that one of the things, I have this whole like little list of things that I ask people to send me before I even agree to work on a cover, because
Yeah.
now I really just pick the books that I love. I mean, like I don't like if there's like, oh, this is a really awesome author, or I really this story sounds really cool. I get to choose now. But one of the things I ask people is I ask them to send me three book covers in their genre that they love. And so when somebody sends me three covers that all have giant faces on them, I know they want a giant face cover.
Right.
And they may not say that, but they know what they like,
Yeah.
right? Or if they're all like creepy atmospheric covers, or they're all purples or whatever. Like I'm able to kind of identify what it is that they like. So,
Very cool. And yeah, I think that's amazing that you can somehow magically get these emotions from people looking at the stories, whether they know it or not. And like you said, most people don't know it; they just know how they feel about the story. And I appreciate that too. You asking me, or you telling me what your sort of criteria is, because I was going to ask you about that, as far as like how you drill down, how do you know how to work on a story, even if you do like it, what's your starting point, and that. So it sounds like the impression that I'm getting, and I know I've heard from a few people that have had your covers as well, that they're usually blown away, like, wow. And she even read the book. So, and it's incredible to think that you would just, somebody just say, yeah, so what's the story about? Okay, cool, I'll just slap this together. Or, hey, I've got that kicking around in my old archives, I'll just throw that at you. But you actually do something that literally ties in with the story. Not just the story, but in this case, I guess the literal author, the author behind the story as well. You try to tie it all in there with them, which is cool.
it's
So a lot of layers going on.
well, and that's the thing, is that you may not, people may not realize that, but
Yeah.
they still experience that. And like I did, here's another one of my, ah, I
The
need book,
avalanche of
I need
books, not a bad way to go, but
this. This is another one of my favorite covers. I did this for Cemetery Dance for
I
Scott
love that.
Edelman's
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
Things That Never Happened. And has been nominated for the Bram Stoker Award 8 times and never won. He is an amazing, amazing fiction writer, and to get to illustrate for him was like it just like made me so nervous because his writing is so wonderful. And so I read this book, and one of the things that it's a collection, and one of the things that was really interesting about it is that he had a lot of older characters in the story. He dealt a lot with the themes of uh, loss, of memory, of family, of people holding on to things that they really shouldn't be holding on to.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do, so what I created was it's an older protagonist. It's not a 19-year-old girl or something. It is uh, her face is gone. Her head is a cage, and if you look very closely inside, it's a
There's her
death's head
mom.
moth.
That's cool.
So it it represents so many of the themes that ran through Scott's book,
Yeah.
and uh, but didn't say I'm going to illustrate this story in the book. But you know, I love being able to do that kind of thing where I can kind of distill it down into the themes. And I also think another thing is people need to remember that it's not enough to have cool art on your cover. It needs to be cool art that ties into your book, and it needs to be memorable.
Yeah.
So I also say that there's a test that's like, my book cover is the one with, right? So there was back, I don't know, for folks who watched Friends, every Friends episode was the one where or the one with, you
Right.
know, and so, but I think that you need that with a book. The one with the giant monster coming out with the tram of tourists, right? The
Yeah.
one with this is let me pull another one. It's a couple of my other favorites here. I really do need I need bookends. I'm gonna work on that because when I pull the books, then they're all gone. Um,
The
so
carousellers.
if I die
I think
underneath
you
a
got some
pile of
jealous books
books,
there.
there
They're
we
like,
go.
pick me, not that one, pick me.
Right? This is a cover that I did for Scott Brown called Lost Creatures, and it's very
Oh, cool.
not my style. But
Yeah.
I've known Scott for a gazillion years, and when he approached me, I said, well, of course, I have to do your cover. And it's a lot of kind of magical realism. It's a collection of short stories, and some of them had other lives, and some of them are, and then some of them were brand new. And as I read when you look at a collection, it's like, how do you find the thing that most identifies an entire collection of work? And
Right.
so, what was really cool about this story, it was one of the news stories, and it was set during the pandemic. And it was, you know, how during the pandemic there were places where animals started to come back because people weren't there anymore.
Hmm.
And in this story, the giant koi returned to San Francisco Bay. And that's what the story's about. And it also helps that Scott lives in the San Francisco area, so having the San Francisco Bridge on the cover is
Yeah.
also a really nice sales thing for him.
Yep, everybody
But
knows
it
that.
also just really represented the the magical spirit of this book. And his books also kind of transition into the mainstream, kind of almost a literary, and so the font choice and the style also kind of played into all of that. But this was an example of something where I actually illustrated directly from a story because that story encapsulates the tone of much of the book.
Cool. And I love
So
too that you've got the author's name and the title. They're extremely similar fonts. I mean, I'm gonna sound like I know all about fonts. I really don't, but I know what I can see, and they're very similar, but they're just slightly different enough where each of them stands out on their own, so they don't really
Right.
mesh in and they don't get lost on each other. It's which is really cool.
Well, I love, especially when I can do things where the text interacts with the image. So
Yeah.
Lost is
Oh
behind
yeah, yeah.
the
Okay.
the bridge, and then Creatures right here is actually behind the bushes, just a little bit.
Yeah, that's super cool.
And so, uh, so to be able to, I actually start every cover with the typography.
Okay.
And it changes as I go along, but I need to know how it's going to flow, how it's going to work, because the title and the byline are really some of the first things that you see.
Yeah.
And but I also love. Here's another example of typography that interacts with the text.
That's
So
cool.
this was Halloween Season by Lucy Snyder.
Yeah.
And if you look, Halloween Season actually looks like it's painted on
Oh
the
yeah,
pumpkin,
it goes around with the curvature, and that's cool.
right? And so, and this was actually very interesting. I'd never experienced this level before, but this is from Raw Dog Screaming Press, and they are fantastic in the marketing and promotion of their authors. And it went out to a lot of bookstagrammers and folks, and it was insane because it actually went out. Like people would go and they would post pictures with their pumpkins, and they would make their own like little like mini pumpkin people and stuff, and it
Wow.
was crazy. And I was like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
But it also, Lucy's collection had this everything from this kind of nostalgic, kind of Halloween friendly type stories to kind of
Yeah.
crazy, cosmic horror, and to create something where you can see all these small details. So you have the killer in the window,
Yeah.
and the child looking for help. Underneath here, we have, she
Well, I
says,
didn't even notice the child. Holy smokes. Yeah.
yes, and then we have a zombie under here, um, and then of course on the back we have demon,
Yeah. Of course. That is
and
cool.
but being able to, but I started the concept knowing that that's what I wanted to do with the typography, you know.
Very cool. And they seem like all the covers that you've shown me, shown all of us here, and the ones that I've seen as well. They're it's almost like a collection of curios that you have where you can't help but wonder. You kind of get like Jack Skelton syndrome, where it's like, what's this? What's that? Because you want to know. Like even that pumpkin, I'm thinking, who's that killer in there? Is he out to get them? Is he hiding from them? What do these kids want? Why isn't anybody answering the door? What's going to happen when somebody answers the door? There's all
It's
these things going on that like I need to find out. So of course you're going to pick it up, you're going to touch it, you're going to want to see what it's all about, and
the
that's
questions,
awesome.
asking questions, making a cover that asks questions
Yeah,
is so you hit the nail right on the head. You have to have questions, because if you don't have questions, you're not going to flip to the back,
right.
right? If you've not, it's not enough to be like, oh, that looks cool. It should look cool. I
Yeah,
believe that it should look cool, but that's not enough to sell books
right.
consistently, at least.
And when you were starting out too, originally, when you were kind of learning these things, when the first or when you first thought I can do that, then you realize, holy crap, yes, I can do that, but it's going to take me a lot of work. What would you say was your biggest challenges? I mean, I know you mentioned that you always start with the topography first. You mentioned lighting and having the proper color schemes tied all together so it's not clouded, it's very clear. But learning the process of getting all these things down, was there any particular thing that you found, extremely challenging that you're like, oh, if only I can get over this, I can get on with the rest of the process, or was it all just everything?
I think I think actually probably my biggest challenge is teaching marketing and promotion to the clients, because I have, in addition to in addition to having done this for 11 years as an artist, I was a writer for a gazillion years before that, and I actually used to teach marketing and promotion for authors.
Oh, okay.
I was a senior editor at a small press publishing company for 7 years. So I know what the marketing side of all of this means. Um,
Oh,
and I had 7 published young adult, mostly historical horror novels. And
okay.
so I have all of this background that I bring to it, and then I worked in a marketing department at a historic theater. And sometimes I think probably the biggest challenge is helping people to understand why they need the kind of cover that they need. And because it is so hard to kind of process, it's so hard to step away from your own work enough to see it as to see it empirically, I guess. One of the other things I always ask folks is finish this sentence. Fans of blank's book blank will love my book. And and it and I know I'm in trouble when people say fans of Stephen King's The Stand will love my book. No, no, no,
Yeah,
they won't. It's not. Maybe they will, but that's not that marketing. That's not the same marketing aim.
yeah,
Um, and so you have to kind of. Uh, it's just it. So I spend a lot of time kind of talking to people about why I made the choices that I made, and where the direction that I'm trying to go. I always ask for author feedback, what they see in terms of an idea for the cover. And I've done, I don't know, I think I've done 60, 64 or 65 covers for Cemetery Dance over the years.
yeah.
And the last convention, the last StokerCon in person, uh, I work with uh, I work with Norm Prentice, who I just adore. And he said, Lynn, we've been working together for a really long time now. He says, I just need you to know something. He said, every time you send me a book cover that is absolutely nothing at all like what the author thought they wanted, I have a little heart attack until they write me back and say they loved it. And he said, and then that always happens. And he
That's
said,
great.
so I've learned not to stress over it. But that's the thing, is that I come with a different perspective. I come with the perspective um, that authors and publishers need. And if I am not the artist that, if you want to say, okay, I know exactly what I need. I want this thing here and that thing there, and if you send me a sketch, there's a very good likelihood that you are not going to be a good fit for me,
Yeah,
because I like to take all of that, put it in the hopper, and then see what comes out. But I am not the person that says, "Can you draw this thing here for me?" I don't do that. So,
gotcha. Yeah, and I find that that's probably the toughest that I would think for authors as well. Maybe not so much the veterans that have worked with the cover artists over the years or over their career, but I imagine that's got to be tough for them too, of course, because as you know, being on both sides of the fence is that you've got your book, but then of course, as soon as it's all done and it goes out to the public, it's not necessarily your book anymore, but the perspective of it is up to the beholder. So I imagine that's tough for them to think. So how is this going to be perceived? Because it hasn't obviously hit the markets yet, because it goes through your interpretation of it first before it's 100% ready to go out on the market. And I imagine that, oh, so that's how my book has been perceived. I'm not really sure that's what I was going for. And then I imagine it takes there's a digestion period, I would think, for it to kind of settle in and think, oh, okay, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I can understand that now, and let's go with that. I imagine that's got to be tough on both sides, but particularly with the author, I would think, getting this for the first time, getting your cover art for the first time.
it's to see, and I think it helps when the more history that I have that's visible for folks, the more they know the impact that a good cover can have. And then the less grief I get. I mean, I really don't. I think over these 11 years, I think maybe half a dozen times I've had somebody come back and say, "This is really not the thing that I thought it was going to be for this reason
Yeah.
that they hadn't shared with me before."
Of course.
And then I will just do another cover. I don't do a lot of drafts. I don't send a lot of sketches. But if somebody really doesn't connect with the story, I'll do something totally different.
Yeah.
And but like I said, over 11 years, that's happened maybe half a dozen times.
That's not
So,
bad, and people generally are pretty darn picky, and I mean these are their children, so if that only happens
right?
that often, that's I'd say that's pretty good.
It's
And even better than that, of course, it sounds like you redid it, and obviously they're very happy with it. So
well, and sometimes you get to a point where you don't connect for it could be many reasons. And that's happened a couple of times, and I totally just refund the deposit. And I've done, like, if I do a cover and then it's not a good fit and we can't agree, I actually will sell them as a pre-made book cover, and I still get paid. So uh,
that's just smart businessing.
well, and it makes people really happy because I do uh, every month for my newsletter, I do a creepy calendar,
Yeah,
which
thank you for
is
mentioning that.
I do this, I do a new piece of art. Usually it ties into the month, or usually it's just like something I feel like I want to make. It's just something fun.
Yeah,
And then I turn it into a pre-made book cover that I sell at about half my normal rates. And most of them go within minutes. It's like insane. People are like, I had one person who told me my finger was shaking as I was messaging you, hoping nobody else had already taken it. But I love this because the newsletter itself I started it in the middle of the pandemic because I noticed that a lot of my friends were leaving social media. The stress was just getting to them.
yeah,
And two of my biggest clients weren't on social media at all. And I was like, oh, I don't get to talk to them at all anymore. Like only when I reach out, like, hey, how's it going? But that's hard to remember to do that with all the people. And
completely.
so I
Yeah,
said, I'm going to start this newsletter, and uh, and I wanted something that would keep in touch, remind people that I'm around, but uh, encourage people to write me back. I get people who write me back every single newsletter, which is like I wanted people to feel like you're not getting an ad from me.
right.
There are some newsletters that go out that have like you're always supposed to have like the ask, right? Like, what do you want? What action do you want people to take based on your emails?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes there's nothing. There's a link. There's
Hey,
always
how
a
are
link
you?
to my portfolio, but sometimes it's like, hey, here's a behind the scenes on this thing that I made,
Yeah.
or here's a picture of our new house, or little. I try to share uh, who I am because there are tons of great artists out there. And when you hire me, you are hiring me, not just because of my art, but because of me. And so it's important for people to know who I am and what you know, uh, how I look at life and my attitude and my professionalism, and I want that all to come through. And
Yeah.
my newsletters actually have kind of it's almost they have like a fake dialogue going on. It's like, hey, so what else have you got going on? Oh, let me tell you about this. Really, but I thought you said you were going to do this.
Well,
And
that's what
so
I love about it. It's very conversational, and it's just like reading. I don't know. It's like the visual equivalent of listening to a voicemail message that you just left. It's very personal.
right? That's it. And I love the fact that people will write me back and tell me
Yeah.
tell me what's going on. And I've been doing it for about a year and a half, and I have insanely high open rates with people actually reading it, which makes me really happy.
Yeah.
I don't have a crazy number of subscribers, but I don't ever want to be everybody's artist. I don't want to be everybody's newsletter person. I want to have the people where we are a good fit together. And so I love it. I love my people, and I call it my VIP list, and I also do if people are on my newsletter list, They get a $50 discount off of every pre-made.
Yeah.
And they also, and they also get first dibs when I send out the newsletter with the pre-made every month, so that it shows up in their inbox instead of waiting for me to post it in social media. And then I also have on social media, I have a group called Lynne Hansen Art's Pre-Made Book Cover Club.
Okay.
And I always post my pre-mades there before they go wide to the rest of social media,
Yeah.
so that the people who are really vested and really interested, who are already really good supporters of me, always get first dibs, and they almost never make it out of the group. So
That's perfect. That's exactly what you want. I'm hoping I can start looking to that kind of stuff too at the by the end of the year as well. I wrote a short novel at the beginning of the pandemic as well. That's kind of been sitting on the back burner for a long time. But then I see all your covers, and I'm like, I would love to have one of your covers on this thing. So that's a recipe for success, assuming the content doesn't completely suck. So that's something to be excited about too. And I'm sure I'm not the only person. I know there's a lot of people, especially as self-publishing kind of loses its stigma as well, and you've got a lot of people that are trying to join that aspect of it as well because they just want to get read. I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that are finding your covers and the option of being able to work with you down the road for their books is probably inspiring a lot of other people as well to have something that can go underneath your cover.
it's really funny because with the pre-made covers, I've actually had people buy the cover and say, I'm going to go write that story. Because now I need to write a
Cool.
giant centipede story, because you made a cover that I was like, I don't know, I think there's a giant centipede in a fossil here and coming down through the walls. I don't know what it is, but I wanted to make that because I thought giant centipedes are cool.
Yeah.
Now somebody's actually writing a giant centipede novel.
That's a pretty, when you think about it, that's like the ultimate filtration system, because I know a lot of the times you'll go to your social media through Facebook and you'll say, "Hey, this month is coming up. What does a month mean to you? What do you think I should do?" So people will kind of give you some ideas in that, and then you do up a cool monthly calendar art for that, and then that's pretty cool thinking that somebody else might look at that and then write their interpretation of that. It's almost like 6 degrees of creation, between people giving you
It is.
suggestions,
It's
you
like
doing it, them writing it.
art inspires art. It's this
Yeah.
lovely cycle, right? And
Yeah.
I love that. I've also did for a couple years. I didn't do it this year, but for the 2 years before, I did this thing called 31 Days of Art in October.
Okay.
And
Yep. I
it
remember. Yeah.
and every day in October, the first year I used somebody else's list. The second year, I actually went out to social media and said, "Give me some creative prompts, one word prompts." So there would be like um, Kraken. All right. What are we going to make for a Kraken? All right, I guess that's
Yeah.
what we'll do. So I put them all on a little list, and every day I would take the next thing on the list. The day before, I would say, okay, tomorrow's prompt is uh, haunted house. All right, what should I make? And then people would give me all these suggestions, and I would take all of my favorite bits, kind of like the book, like reading a
Yeah.
book, right? And say, okay, now what am I going to make? And then I would make it, and the next day I would post it and offer it for sale. And the first year I sold every single one of my pieces. The second year I sold all but I think two.
Wow.
And it was insane. I mean, some of them were like seconds. Like I would click post, and like 3 seconds later, I want that. Like, how do you even know that you have something that will work for that?
I know,
And but it's just like
that's amazing.
it is wonderful. And there's something about that, like when you have the opportunity to just make whatever you want. For me, it's harder than like if I have constraints. If I have to say, okay, well, I'm going to make this thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to take and create something that fits these parameters. That's a werewolf that is set in the Antarctic, or
Yeah.
like that actually inspires me more than people say, okay, make whatever you want. I'm like, I don't know what I want. I don't know. That's That's why I always end up on social media saying, okay, so now what do you think? Because if I can make whatever I want, what do you think I should make? And that's fun.
Well, I think you nailed it on several of the examples that you gave, Lynn, is that I think from my interpretation of all this is that I think a lot of your art and a lot of your cover stuff that's so appealing to people and is so quickly snatched up. I think that's just the fact that you don't just have your finger on the pulse as far as what people are looking for, but you're in a sense you're kind of a part of that pulse. You know, you're in the same mindset as everybody that follows you, and you're finding out what their mindset is, and it's this just you connect with everybody from a cognitive level, so naturally I think your art is going to have that appeal to everybody because you're already immersed in that same mindset and they're immersed in your mindset as well. So again, it goes back to that you're just connecting with everybody and doing things that appeals to them because that's all one big connected um I don't know, family, I guess, weird, strange, fantastic family that you've got going on. And so
Absolutely.
it's
I
pretty
mean, I
cool.
have been a horror fan my entire life. And in fact,
Yeah,
Jeff and I met at the World Horror Convention in 1995
I
when,
was going to ask you guys how you met as well, so that was one of my first questions, but we kind of blew past that a while ago, so thank you. See, you were connected.
he's, it was insane because Jeff had nothing published at the time, and I
Yeah,
had a couple of short stories published. In fact, I had a story in a magazine called Into the Darkness by Dave Barnett. Dave Barnett from Necropress had put this together. It was my first like paid
yeah.
sale. And the entire convention, Dave would be like, "Over there, that's Ellen Datlow. Go give Ellen Datlow a copy." And I'm like, "Okay."
Deep
And he'd
breath.
be like, "Over there, that's Harlan Ellison. Go give Harlan Ellison a copy." And until for years, Dave would say, "Lynn is the person who handed Harlan Ellison a copy of my magazine, and he did not throw it away while we were watching it."
That's
I'm
great.
like, yes.
When?
Um, so it was, so this entire time I was all about, oh, my story. I get to tell people about my story. And I
Yeah.
took one look at Jeff and I said, oh, he's not a publisher, an editor, an agent. And I totally blew him off.
Oh.
And Jeff was one of the few people that Dave Barnett actually made buy a copy of the magazine. And Jeff bought a copy of the magazine and then uh, went home, read my story, and he sent me fan mail. It was my first fan mail.
That's great.
And 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 he still laughs because he's like, "Yes, you married the first person who said they liked your writing." and but it was wonderful. And he lived in Tucson. I lived in Tampa,
Yeah,
and he had a five paycheck, no, a 5 week, a three paycheck month. And he
yeah.
flew to Tampa, and we spent some time together. And then he flew home, and he saved money and moved to Tampa 3 months later.
Wow, I'm glad that worked out. That could have, I mean, I've read Misery. That could have worked out so many different ways.
Right? Oh my gosh! And I had talking about misery. So this was also back in the days before you got to see people on the internet.
Yeah,
So
yeah, news
I
groups and
didn't
all that.
remember what Jeff looked like at all. And he remembered me from the convention as, let's just say, my slightly more svelte best friend at the time. So when he said, I'm going to get off the plane and I'll be wearing my Indiana Jones ball cap. And that's it. That's it. And then he stayed for 9 days. And it could have been horrible, but I thought, oh, I have a roommate
Yeah.
and it'll be fine because, I'll be safe. My roommate had just started dating this girl, and so he was nowhere for all 9 days. He was like hanging over at her house, and I'm like, dude, you were supposed to make sure. But he was good.
Good.
And I decided I would keep him. And and
Put him in your
and
pocket, and he's not going anywhere.
yes, and it'll be in June. We'll have been married 25 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy. And
I'm so glad that
but
worked out the way that it did for you guys.
it's wonderful because when you work as a freelance creative, your life is hectic and really intense all the time, and it is wonderful to have somebody who understands that.
Yeah.
So whoever's on the worst deadline, the other person takes up the slack. And then we bought an auto feeder for the cat for the times when we're both on
Those things are
deadline.
so cool. I've seen them before. That's a great idea.
Because we just like, you got to make sure that the life keeps going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it also helps because we also, I mean, almost everything we do is around the genre that we love.
Yeah.
And so we travel, when we travel a lot, we do a lot of conventions and things that we really enjoy. And it's just wonderful. I mean, it's a very kind of supportive, it's a very supportive relationship, and that we have so many things in common. It makes it very comfortable. So
Absolutely. Yeah. You're definitely on the same page in a lot of that kind of stuff. And speaking of which, too, this segues perfectly into a question that I'm like, how do I ask this? There hasn't been a great opportunity to just throw it in all awkward like, but this is a good opportunity now because I really am curious. Um, the fact that, like you mentioned, I mean, you guys are both freelancers, so it's literally your livelihood to be probably thinking about this stuff every second, every minute. You never get a necessarily a day off because when the work calls, you got to answer that call. Otherwise, like you're any freelancer, you're afraid to say no because you think there's never going to be another opportunity, even though you know that's not rational. But that's probably how it feels.
it's
And I
always how it feels.
imagine, yeah, and I can only imagine having two people that are absolutely immersed in this constantly. There is a such thing as burnout. I've no doubt that it's real, and I know that you guys are both such people persons. I don't know, but you know what I mean. And that the fact that we haven't had a whole lot of face-to-face stuff going on with the conventions and get any of these things out in your system, and feeling like you're in a bigger world, what do you guys do to kind of get away from it all? Like, is there anything that you do that's has absolutely nothing to do with horror or your freelance gigs or any of these amazing books around you? Like, is there anything that you do to get away from that, or is burnout just nothing? Is that just something that just doesn't exist for you
Oh,
guys?
oh no,
Maybe you're an
burnout is
anomaly.
real. Burnout is very real.
Yeah,
During the pandemic, it was insanely hard,
yeah,
because our way to get away from things, to get that little break and recharge, is we would go out and have adventures. So we would go and like, oh, let's drive here and go see this, or
yeah.
we both have our own personal food favorites. Jeff is a huge hot dog fan, and so we will travel anywhere for an odd hot dog. And
They're all
I,
odd.
right? And I will travel anywhere for cool ice cream, literally and
Nice.
figuratively. And so we'll be like, ah, let's go here and try this, or let's
Yeah,
go and find, the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota or whatever. But sorry, Weird Al reference, but
yeah,
uh, which is also very interesting. When Jeff and I moved in together, we only had two artists in common in our music background,
yeah.
and that was Weird Al and Alice Cooper. We both had everything.
It's an L thing. And you know
Yes.
what's funny is I actually had an Alice Cooper. I was getting ready and stuff, and I started humming a song. This might be TMI. I was humming a song in the shower, and I got this earworm of Alice Cooper, and I'm like, I need to listen to that song. So literally just before we jumped on here, I was listening to um, Red Roses on White Lace, the Alice Cooper song, which I absolutely love. That was just in my ear, so I had to get it out. Sorry, continue. I just thought that was funny that you mentioned them.
No, I mean I can't now. I'm like, what were we talking about? Oh, adventures. So we go out on
Yes.
adventures, and we love to road trip. We love to travel. The only thing we got to do during the pandemic is Jeff's mom has a little cabin on a lake in Wisconsin, and she wasn't able to go and spend any time in the summer last year, due due to other issues.
Yeah.
And so we went up and we packed up the cat, and we drove 19 hours from Atlanta, trying to
Rippers.
avoid everybody. And we, not this past year, but the year before.
Yeah.
And we spent like a month at the cabin, because and we relaxed some, we worked some, but if we can be out in nature, out in a place where we can paint or read or do other things that kind of refill the well, we love that. But traveling and seeing friends, we did this year. We were so excited because we got to go. We went to Asheville with some friends
Yeah,
and
I
went
saw the
around and saw a
pictures.
whole bunch of like, just kind of experienced all the coolness of Asheville. We went to West Virginia for a gig and then spent extra time. We were guests at the Haunted Majestic, Haunted Hospital Ship, where there was a wonderful book signing with the
Cool.
West Virginia Horror Writers Association. But then we went around and did like a bazillion haunted houses. And so we like to kind of, traveling is our favorite way to get out and away from the house. And one of the reasons that we moved this winter was that we realized, having been in Atlanta for as long as we were, uh, we had originally picked our house because it was nice and centrally located. And when I moved there, I was working in film, and that's kind of what I needed.
Yeah.
And when we realized, after having spent all of this time in uh, during the pandemic in the house, we were like, we need a bigger house. I love you, but it's going to be really nice to have. He can be upstairs, I can be downstairs. We can sit in the same room here, we can sit in the same room there. But literally, in our old house, there was no place really that we could work where where we weren't just kind of arms distance away. And so now we have a lot more space to kind of breathe
Good. Yeah.
and enjoy and explore. And in the new house also, the other thing is because I make what I love. I mean, the art that I make for covers, I just absolutely love. And but I never have time to try new things. You don't want to try something new on a client.
Right.
And so in the new house, we're actually in my play studio, which is, I have a work studio which has like my tablet and all of my kind of dimmer lighting, because where I work digitally, it's a big help, and it's a very kind of focused, quiet space. And then I have my play studio, which has this beautiful bright light, and has canvases and paints and everything all over, and a giant table where I can just leave everything out and I can play a little bit, because I want to grow as an artist. I want to explore and experiment, just like people do as writers, as anything creative. You want to be the best that you can be and learn. And so this new house gives me an opportunity to have the whole space where I get to do that all the time. So
Perfect. And it's kind of nice too, because it probably does feel like an actual workspace as opposed to you're just taking over some home space to do your work. So I'm sure that's got to be freeing too, and probably help out with the focus as well. So, and I like the fact too, and you mentioned about growing as
absolutely.
an artist, that your stuff isn't just all digital. It's you're very practical as well. It's, I know with your painting, and your photography as well. I've seen a lot of the photos that you've taken that are just absolutely gorgeous. That honestly, I know that there's digital touch-ups, but I thought it was all digital. But then I realized, well, no, because through your newsletters and doing some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, I got to really appreciate the fact that you're right down there with the camera. That, and I know over this one here, this is pretty cool too. Is that Jeff's hands seem to make it all over the place. So you've actually got him breaking pencils, and I think that was one of the behind-the-scenes things that you talked about as well in your newsletters. Is that
Yes.
there's a lot of pencil breaking going on there. I think Jeff's probably still got the splinters or the calluses from breaking all these pencils to get it right. It's like, come on, break that pencil the right way, Jeff. I can only imagine the conversation. So
It's
it's cool that you got that practical aspect of your artwork as well, which is great.
well, I love I I love being able to. Uh, Sometimes custom photography is the only way I get to where I want to go.
Yeah,
And I also, uh, most people, they ask me my medium, and they are never expecting me to say that I work digitally. And that makes me happy, because I work digitally because I work lean and fast. I have lots of flexibility, but I like to emulate traditional illustration styles.
yeah,
So I love that feel. I love a feel of like of an oil paint feel, where you get that blend and that translucency and that glow that you can get in some of the works. And to be able to convey that digitally, I'm very happy when people are surprised that that's how I work
Yeah.
for a huge chunk of what I do. And um, yeah, and I think also I don't think that if I worked in traditional media as if I worked in traditional media, I wouldn't be able to produce as much as I do either.
Yeah. No,
So
absolutely. So no, I really appreciate all your time today, Lynn. How are we doing for time? Do I have, we okay for a
sure,
couple
sure.
more quick questions?
Yeah, no, I'm
Appreciate
totally
that.
fine.
So one of the things here, and I love your shirt. I've seen that before. I think it's brilliant. And I understand that you're doing a lot more of the shirts. You've got your own merchandise as well. So where do you see
I
some of your,
will.
oh, it's not up yet. Sorry, I jumped the gun on that one, didn't I?
It's
So where do
that's
you
one of
see it going? Sorry, go ahead.
no, no. So where do I see going with merch?
With
People
merch and
have
your own
always
artwork
asked.
and different avenues for getting your creativity out there in the world.
So one of my goals for the new year, it's not like a New Year's resolution because I
Sure.
don't do those things,
Yeah,
but I want to create more personal projects, more things that uh, will take me a lot longer to create, I guess, too.
yeah,
During the pandemic, from the time that Jeff and I went into kind of self-imposed isolation to when we got our second vaccination, right?
yeah.
Uh, that was 13 months. I made 131 pieces of art during that time. It ended up being like one every 3 days.
That's
And,
incredible.
and I have aspirations to work on a much larger scale, to work on things that will take me a long time, um, to do things that are still on brand for me, that don't necessarily tie into a specific book. I want to create unique collections of art themed around the things that I love, that I know folks in the genre love,
Yeah,
and then and actually launch a store this year, to be
very cool.
able to share some of those things with the world and be able. I don't know that I will ever sell prints online. I only do my prints at shows because I'm very, I'm not a big fan of, I don't like mailing things. It's really time consuming, and I
Yeah,
always worry that things are going to get broken, and it's really expensive to do. And
especially cross border, it's ridiculous.
uh, it's insane. And so I don't think I will ever sell prints online. Those will still always be show exclusive type stuff. But I want to do more. I'd love to do a clothing line that's specific. That's not just, oh, that's the cool skull from Jeff Strand's Five Novellas. Like,
Yeah,
I want it to be actual, like, fashion. I want it to be so it's not just a cool image on a T-shirt, although there will be some of that because I
yeah,
will always wear black T-shirts with cool things on it. That's part
yes.
of just who I am, right? And so I have lots of things that I want to do, and this year I'm determined to make sure that I have time to do them and to take fewer commissions to make that happen. So
Very cool. Well, as somebody way up here in Canada, I'm hoping that toques, or as we like to call them, I don't know, beanie hats or what have you, gets gets included as part of your merchandise line because I'm always looking for some cool toques.
there you go.
So, and you beat me to the punch as well, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit sad that although I understand why you don't do the prints by mail. So, is there any plans of you coming up to Canada, or where do you think the closest is that you would be? And I know it's so precarious right now with this wonderful pandemic. Anything can change by the end of
The
this conversation, so who knows?
the conventions that we're committed to so far this year are StokerCon in Colorado,
Yeah,
um, Scares That Care in Virginia in the end of July, but also AuthorCon in April, which is a kind of a variation on Scares That Care that's all focused on authors and author related stuff.
and that's in Pennsylvania,
And
I
then
think, or
That is, I'm not
And
sure.
wasn't
It
sure
may
if it was
be.
closer to Brian Keene or closer to Wrath.
I don't know. Oh, also we are going to do Killer Con in Texas,
Okay,
and Nikon in Rhode Island, or I think it's going to be in Massachusetts this year.
cool.
Um, and uh, and then Multiverse, which is in Atlanta. It's a newer convention, but they're really fantastic. There's this lovely mix of fantasy, science fiction, and horror, like multiple tracks, and they're all of equal importance, which never happens. It's
Yeah,
usually, if you've got fantasy and science fiction, that's usually the focus,
right.
and then there might be a horror thing, but there's like equal tracks, and it's a
Very
great group
cool.
of folks that are putting that one together, and very inclusive too.
Good.
They have great great guest lineup, and the kinds of things that they do are really fantastic. But not no Canada shows so far. Although I do entertain special requests when people want a certain thing. So I do still
Okay,
mail stuff sometimes. Mostly if I have an author who's like, I really want a print of my cover, I will totally do that for them.
cool.
Because how can you say no to that?
Yeah, yeah. And I and again, I appreciate the cost, especially mailing stuff from the States over to Canada is absolutely nuts. I mean, I not so long ago ordered a book and it was crazy, but I told the author up front, it's like, I know this is gonna be stupid expensive. Just let me know. I'll cover it. I don't want you to pay for me to read your book. So, and I think that's an important thing too for those folks that probably make those requests, is just to keep in mind that it's gonna cost, but it's, obviously worth it.
And there may be some options. I'm also really picky about my prints.
Yeah,
All of my prints are fine art prints, so there's giclées that are on this amazing kind of warm textured paper, and they're made with 12 pigments instead of like four inks. So there's this, so they really represent the depth of the art and the texture and the feel of the art. And I love that. And I work with this amazing specialty printer out of Athens, Georgia, but and then I mount them and I mat them all myself and I sign them all, and
oh cool.
it's like this whole, because that's how I want to share my art. But there are also opportunities that I might be able to do something where I do a non fine art version that might be able to ship elsewhere directly.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
those are some of the things I get to play with this year as I'm trying to figure out what I want to do in terms of a store. So I'm excited.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know that's super exciting. And the nice thing about that is you can literally do anything at all you want. It's just your own limits that you put on yourself, which obviously there's really not too many limits. So it's just whatever
Right.
your creative mind desires, you'll get a chance to do that, and nobody will tell you, well, that's not really for me. It's like, well, it's for me, and that's fine. So that's pretty
Right?
awesome. That's exciting.
Exactly.
So are there any I guess to ask you, I guess really I'm asking you for cover reveals here, but is there any particular books or covers right now that you're working on that we can all get excited about as well, that will be seeing grace in the real world in the next little while?
Well, I'm very excited because I just finished a cover for Clash Books, which is my very first one for them, and I love
Okay.
those guys. And I did a book for uh, called The Doctor's Demons, and which was pitched to me as uh, kind of kind of inspired by in the vein of A Head Full of Ghosts, which is one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, this book, it's debut horror novel, and it is just going to be it's gonna knock people's socks off. It's so good. Like, usually when I read a book for in preparation for a cover, I
Yeah.
will tell you my secret, which is a lot of people, the good authors, the thing that needs to be on the cover is already within the first three or four chapters. Just like how, when you submit, people are like, oh, I can tell if a book is good if the first three or four chapters. I
Right.
can tell you, for the majority of books that are really good, in the first three or four chapters, I get that. I get the vibe, and a lot of times I'll find the thing that is going to connect. And then I read the rest of the book to make sure that I get the style and tone right. or I go through till I get right, so I can get certain details
Yeah.
right. Um, and but uh, the Doctor's Demons, as I was reading it, I knew kind of immediately what I wanted, and then I just sat back and read like I was reading in my armchair because it's that kind of book. It's so good,
Right.
and I love it when that happens.
Cool. And
So
I'm
I
sorry,
got
who's the author on that one?
so
Are
that's
you,
Maria Abrams,
Ray Abrams? Okay.
and it's her debut horror novel. So it's fantastic with Clash Books, and
Okay.
yeah, it's fantastic. I have
Does that have a pub date yet, or
it's coming out in April, and the cover
April?
reveal was
Okay.
just this past week,
Oh, okay.
and it was a ton of fun. And I have so many really super cool things going on that I but I can't share them because they haven't been
Understandable.
announced yet.
Yeah.
But I have I'm right now. I'm one of the projects that I'm really excited about is I'm working on another book for Raw Dog Screaming Press for with uh, a book by Daniel Kraus, who
Okay.
he did the novelization of The Shape of Water with Guillermo del Toro.
Love that movie.
Uh, he's done collaborated posthumously with George Romero.
Okay.
He's a New York Times bestselling author, and I've been a huge fan since forever. And I get to work on a cover for him, so I'm very excited about that.
How cool is
Uh,
that?
there may be more Weird Tales news coming up.
Oh, okay.
Not saying anything for sure,
Yeah.
but there might be more interesting Weird Tales type stuff coming
That's a
up. And
definite maybe.
shh, don't tell anybody.
Yep.
But and then I'm working on on a new cover for a book that has been around. mm, let's just say maybe this year it's been around for 125 years.
Oh, okay.
So don't say anything, don't say anything. But I'm very excited about that. And there's a big anniversary coming up, and I'm getting to work on a book for that too.
Now, was that a male author or a female author?
That would be a male author.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
So yes, but I have a lot of really fun stuff
Very cool.
on my schedule, and I'm getting to do. I did did a cover last year for Black Spot Books. They did a poetry anthology. It's all uh, women horror poets, and it was called Under Her Skin. And
Okay.
it's a very the print has been like the most popular print I think I've ever done. It's a this gold woman with this kind of flowers coming out of her skin that and black oil, and it's
Oh,
just really creepy but very beautiful. And right now I'm working on the sequel to that. So
cool.
there's another poetry anthology, all women horror poets, and I get to do another cover, and it's going to have a lot of the same themes.
Very
So I'm
cool.
very excited about that. That's what's on my laptop right now that I'm working on.
Awesome. And I guess I imagine as well when you're saying about expanding on your art and the different I guess avenues for getting your art out there. And I know you mentioned that you've got some background in some movie stuff as well. And in chatting with Jeff recently too, I understand that he's got some stuff going on potentially with movies. Do you
Yes.
think there's going to be any correlation where we might start to see some movie poster art from the talented Lynne Hansen?
I have done some movie posters.
Okay.
Um, I actually would love to do more movie posters, but the challenge the challenge is always that I'm crazy busy,
Yeah.
and my rates do not support indie filmmakers. They just don't.
Right. And I
It's
guess
hard.
imagine the big ones too probably have their own in-house people that they go to.
And but I would love because I always try to think of my art cinematically.
Yeah.
And so I love and I'm huge horror movie fan since forever. And I worked in film for about 5 years as a writer and director, and worked on other people's films. And I've done some movie posters, but I think that there is so much fun to be had there, and there's some really cool and creative things being done in horror filmmaking right now.
Yeah.
That it would be so much fun to get to do some covers, some posters like that. So
Very cool. Very,
very
or
much
maybe even to work with, I guess, distributors for for the movie. What do you call it, like the CD covers or the slip cases for the
yeah,
movies?
I'd love to do like
Pretty
Blu-ray
neat.
covers. That would be so much fun.
Yeah, yeah, be very cool. So I guess to kind of wrap things up here, and again, really appreciate your time. This is fantastic. The thing I love about this style of conversation is you literally never know where things are going to go. So I really appreciate you being a part of the early stages of this podcast. So it's between you and Jeff, you guys definitely brought a lot of class to the joint that I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have had otherwise. So again, really appreciate it to both of you for doing that. Where's the best place for folks to subscribe to your newsletter, to find out more of your artwork, to find out how to stalk you and all of your wonderful things that you're going to be doing over the next umpteen years?
So the easiest way to find me is lynnehansenart.com. LYNNEHANSEN and ART, not N and. Anyway, lynnehansenart.com. And you can also find me, Lynne Hansen Art, on everything on social media: Twitter, Facebook,
Perfect.
Instagram, all of those things. And there's a link to subscribe to my newsletter off of my website.
Perfect. I'll
Um,
put that down below too in the description.
yeah, and but I absolutely I love what I get to do, and you know, I go back to what you said about how do you take breaks and how do you take time off. How it's like we love to explore and have adventures, but we don't need to take a lot of time off because
Yeah.
we do what we love.
I know, I love your answer to that. What do you do to get away from horror? I go to horror conventions and haunted houses. I'm sensing a bit of a theme here. It's a lifestyle. It's not a choice.
That's it, right? Like I
That's
just
great.
it's who we are, and
Yeah.
I am so fortunate. I mean, I had day jobs for forever, and that didn't leave enough time to create and nurture those things. And I am so grateful that every day I get up and do what I love, in a house with somebody that I love, and to be able to help authors find readers and open up new worlds for people, with the little bit of thing that I can contribute by helping by creating art for them. And so I do. I'm the luckiest person on the planet. So
Absolutely. And the horror genre is all the better for it too. We need all the great attention and the fact that other people are going to look at these things and think, wow, maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe Harlequin really isn't the best thing for me. So that's fantastic that you're doing all this, and I know we all appreciate your contributions as well. So thank you very, very much.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This was great fun and
You
very
bet.
comfortable interview.
Good, good.
It's a
Appreciate it.
delight.
Good, awesome. I appreciate that. Was there anything else you wanted to get off your mind, or anything else you thought the world should know, other than check your stuff out and keep posted? Because I'm going to guess that people just haven't. This is just the beginning for you.
Thank you. Yes, no. Keep in touch. I love to hear from folks, whether it's on social media, through email, through my newsletter. Um, Definitely, I love, that's part of being part of this great horror community. So,
Yes.
uh, yeah, wonderful.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. I will let you get back to organizing the chaos of your bookshelves that this podcast has created, and let you get back under your skin there on the laptop. So thank you so much,
Excellent.
Lynn.
Thank you.
You bet. All the best.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Dark Bites, your destination for uncovering the greatest voices working in dark culture entertainment today. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. And most importantly, please do give the like button some skin because it not only declares your mutual love for this dark thing of ours, but it also tells YouTube algorithm powers that be to spread the word about this channel's content, which ultimately helps us all out. Thanks for visiting Dark Bites. I appreciate you. I wouldn't be here without you, and I do hope you'll come back again. Until then, fellow horror lovers, stay hungry, stay dark.